Okay, hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Monica, and if you're new here, it is 7 in the morning. Why am I up at 7 in the morning making this video? It's because I've tried to make it 3 or 4 times, and every time I do it, I get really riled up and can't finish it. So today's the day. I need to get it done. I have to be somewhere in 2 hours. No excuses. We're not stopping this take. We're gonna keep it pushing. Today's video is about pleasure, joy, and all of the ways in which I stop myself and we stop ourselves from making space for more joy in our lives. And today we have a sponsor. It is my pleasure to speak of pleasure. I am honored to share today's sponsor, CHEEX. CHEEX is an online platform designed to sexually empower and inspire users with unlimited access to erotic films, audio stories, and education for everyone. CHEEX strives to show sexuality in ethical, consensual, fun, and diverse ways. Mainstream pornography focuses on profit, and that process compromises the safety and autonomy of performers and crew. It also has contributed to a lot of sexual misinformation, unrealistic and toxic expectations, and has been the root of a lot of our own body image issues and struggles with intimacy. Ethical porn aims to create better and safer standards for all participants, with more comprehensive practices around consent that factor in the physical and emotional states of performers, better production conditions for everyone involved, as well as more authentic depictions of sex. With this conversation centering on pleasure, I do believe pornography can be a useful tool to find a little moment of joy with yourself or with a partner, and lessening the stigma around the consumption of it and participation in it would lead to more ethical practices throughout the industry, as well as lessening the shame we all feel with our own sexuality and pleasure. So if you're interested in high quality, ethical, and diverse erotic films, audio erotica, even live intimate workshops where experts show you sex practices in step-by-step ways, please check out CHEEX. They have been generous enough to offer us 14 days free using code MONICA, which will be linked below. That's 14 days free with no obligation with an annual subscription. The subscriptions range from $14.90 per month or $9.90 per month if you get the yearly subscription. Once again, thank you so much, CHEEX, and let's continue with the video. Ooh, look at these cheeks. Cheeks right here. This has been a recurring issue for me for as long as I could remember. I am someone that, for how much I try, can't seem to separate pleasure from guilt, pleasure from bad. I feel like whenever I start to feel too good, things are gonna go bad. This has been a recurring issue in my life, and in turning 27 this year, I'm going to turn 27 September 4, Virgo gang, ow, literally, ow. In turning 27 this year, I just keep finding myself repeating the same patterns. I keep finding that independent of where I'm at in life, of who I'm with, of how I'm doing financially, how I'm doing in any single way, shape, or form, I am my own enemy in a lot of cases, and I need to do the work of fleshing that out. I feel like, unlike a lot of different issues, pleasure is super complicated because it's not rooted in an individual thing. I mean, nothing is rooted in a singular thing, but pleasure of all things is super intertwined into every single aspect of our daily experience. I feel like it's not necessarily a grass is always greener on the other side kind of vibe. Like, when I'm different, I'll be better. But more so, it's not about being better. It's about realizing that I am enough and turning my day-to-day into a more present and guilt-free experience. Wow, that made me emotional. I just kind of want to lift this burden. I feel like I live in this kind of darkness and this sort of mutedness and this sort of I feel like I'm outside of a window looking in on my own life all the time, independent of what's going on. I've had incredible, absolutely life-changing, once-in-a-lifetime experiences. I am so freaking fortunate, and a lot of the times, and it just feels kind of like I'm trapped in I don't know, I feel like I'm a little kid. It's 7 in the morning. But I think it's because I haven't figured out how to approach the type of life that I'm worthy of. So in preparation for this video, I picked up the Pleasure Activism, The Politics of Feeling Good, written and gathered by Adrienne Maree Brown. I have had this for a little while now, and I haven't really dove into it that much, but I did for the sake of the video. I'm still by no means finished with it. But anyways, in preparation for this, I picked it up, and one of the conversations in the beginning or earlier in the book is with Kara Page, who is a Black queer feminist cultural worker, and the writer and gatherer of the book, Adrienne Maree Brown. And they're discussing Audre Lorde's use of the erotic is power, which is a very popular, important text. And Kara Page was just talking about how this specific piece of writing was like really important for her as a woman. It essentially became the anthem of her finding her own sexuality. And something that she said in regards to it really stuck with me and kind of became what I wanted to center this video on, which is, let me read the full quote. She starts it off by saying, "My whole life was filled with desire and destiny. I grew up around jazz musicians, and my mom raised me around theater and the folk festival scene. I also had queer family, 3 generations of Black queer family. So I was very used to a gender spectrum, a cultural reality that was very performative and queer, that was full of life and desire. I was not devoid of that as a child. And yet, as a survivor and a bystander of family violence, desire was hard to trust. When I was young, before he was in recovery from violence, my father was, this term is limited, a batterer, and caused great harm. My mom was a survivor, and I was a survivor/bystander. So all of my erotic self was wrapped in, how do I associate with pleasure and desire without fear, without losing control, without being harmed? I really had to walk out of a space that allowed for me to unravel and unpack those things as separate, so I could define my sexuality and my erotic self in relationship to something that did not have to be violent, to understand that the desire to be loved and to love your family wasn't always mired with violent past, but could begin again with new and healing destinies." So I really love this, and what stuck out to me in regards to like what I relate to was, how do I associate with pleasure and desire without fear, without losing control, without being harmed? I think this is kind of like the perfect question to kind of begin to unpack this, because this is something that I find is a recurring, especially as you get older and you become more aware of the things that you've been through and you feel more like impacted by life. How can you move forward? How can you really make these sort of connections and find joy for yourself when you feel like life has hurt you so much, and when you feel like everything is so interwoven into like a constellation, like you're constricted by these pains, by these evils, by all of this harm. So yeah, what really sparked this conversation was that I feel like I don't kind of recognize myself as much lately. And I think it's obviously the product of the difficulty of these last 2 years for all of us. I feel like I'm not as adventurous, as full of passion, as open, as full of desire anymore. And part of that is due to the deterioration of good habits that I had built over a long period of time. Growing up super depressed and not having access to mental health, and not having access to mental health professionals, and like that being super taboo in my household, I essentially had to learn how to create habits for myself through trial and error. I'm very lucky to have made it out relatively, one could argue I'm not, but relatively okay. You know what I mean? I feel like I really worked hard. I read a lot. I wrote a lot. I created art. I was in art school at the time as well. So that puts you in a position where you're having to constantly be more self-reflective than the average, career path. So I put a lot of time and effort into creating good habits that then made me into the person that I found myself being in my early mid-20s. But with the 2020 pandemic, it brought me to a low that I haven't really even been able to fully grasp, like financially, emotionally, physically, in every single way, shape, and form. But I think the most harmful part of what happened to me, and it's something I've talked about in previous videos, is the total dissolution of habits that like are what make adults. From forgetting to like, and not knowing how to like feed myself, at what times I should eat, what should I even like make, what do I even buy, like, and the, you know, and that's so not who I was. I was already like building up to be so put together that for me to not even like be able to read my own body's signals, like what should I do, when should I sleep, everything kind of fell apart. I took for granted how much being a human being is these habits, how much it is like I wake up at this time, do this, like clean this, and how everything piles up. I think you learn that from childhood. You start to trial and error, like, okay, you get this like little level of responsibility, clean your room, and then do some homework, and then take a nap, and then like, you know, you kind of do that, and then you get to the point where you do that by yourself, and then before you know it, you're an adult. For me, all that went out the window. And this, you know, for 2021, essentially, I was super focused on getting back on my feet, on creating these new habits again, because I had gotten to a point where I was like, bro, I cannot live like this. I literally cannot. I'm not even sustaining myself. So I think I have been so focused on getting back on my feet that I had a realization the other day that all this work and all this struggle and this desire to be better, but never did I factor in joy and pleasure. And it's not like in the past where I struggled with depression and like, and it's like I could go out, but I'm sad. I could go out, but like, I don't really want to do the things that I normally do. Like I would normally do this, but like I don't want to do it anymore. Like, it's literally like I have just completely forgotten like my options. I have completely like, I'm like, yo, people really like go out and get dressed and like meet up for drinks and like have conversation, and that's fun. Like and I used to do that all the time. Like I really have had like a lot of like existential sort of like realizations in regards to things that are normal, because it's been so long that I'm just kind of like, oh yeah, like I realized the other day, because I started listening to music, I haven't listened to music in probably like over a year consistently. Like I'm in here listening to podcast after podcast, like just things like words to fill my head, because I don't want a moment of like joy. I think I don't want like it feels like anytime I listen to music, I get so emotional, I want to cry. So that's like part of the reason why I've been realizing like, yo, I'm really not okay, number one. And also for all the work that I'm doing and for how much better I'm doing, there's still obviously so many things that I'm neglecting in my life. I feel like, generally speaking, and this is why it's kind of hard for me to accept that this is something I need to work on, I am content with my life right now. I feel like things are going really well. I feel like my hard work is paying off. I feel more like myself every day, but things are still very muted. I feel like I would describe it as like my internal oven is off. I'm not full of desire. And it's not even that I'm like turned off, is that like there's not even a fire to begin with. Like I can't even make the fire bigger because there is no fire. And I've gotten so used to not having a fire, to being cold, that like the act of even trying to start it is kind of like absurd. I'm just like, why would I do any of these things that used to bring me joy? Like, why? So I wanted to unpack all that and maybe talk about how we could potentially work to get through it. So in my video, Setting Boundaries, Why Grown Men Love Girls, I discussed John Berger's Surveyor and Surveyed, to get into how women, and a lot of us from marginalized backgrounds, or are socialized. The quote I used in the video, I'm going to use again, which is from Ways of Seeing. And he says, "A woman must continually watch herself. She is almost continually accompanied by her own image of herself. While she is walking across a room, or while she is weeping at the death of her father, she can scarcely avoid envisaging herself walking or weeping. From earliest childhood, she has been taught and persuaded to survey herself continually. And so she comes to consider the surveyor and the surveyed within her as two constituent yet always distinct elements of her identity as a woman. She has to survey everything she is and everything she does, because how she appears to men is of crucial importance for what is normally thought of as the success of her life. Her own sense of being in herself is supplanted by a sense of being appreciated of herself by another. One might simplify this by saying men act and women appear. men look at women, women watch themselves being looked at. This determines not only most relations between men and women, but also the relation of women to themselves. The surveyor of woman in herself is male, the surveyed female. Thus she turns herself into an object, and most particularly an object of vision, a sight. So John Berger is essentially describing a lot of the states within which a lot of us live, which is one of a split sort of self-image of watching yourself being watched. You're not inside of yourself. You are outside of yourself watching what you do. It's kind of like you're watching yourself kind of like in a movie. You're hyper aware of how others perceive you. And he says it's because how a woman appears, and obviously this is speaking and says heteronormative terms, gender is a construct per, but for people that are socialized as women, and this also applies to people from marginalized backgrounds, like Black people have which W.B. Du Bois gets into with the ideas of double consciousness, have this it's like you're not just one being, you're watching yourself being watched. You have to be vigilant of how you're perceived by others, because of how you're perceived is of crucial importance to what is normally seen as like successful or important or survival. How you are seen means a lot to your successes in this society. So in that sense, and in the Setting Boundaries video, I discussed this as kind of like how, we are blank slates, and this society then turns us into objects of sights, into these hyper aware beings. Like think of like when you're a child, and think about children in general, how present they are in their bodies, how motivated they are to move, to sing, to speak, to dance around. And somewhere along the way, there comes this moment where we like literally have this experience where we all of a sudden are hyper aware of our own bodies, whether that's like the first time an elder told you to close your legs, or like, stop walking around like that, you're a little slut, or whatever like that, like where you get that sort of like you're where you're sexualized, or you're made hyper aware of your body in ways in which you could have never even conceived because you're a child. From that day forward, I feel like for a lot of us, it becomes this very, we have this very tumultuous like relationship with our existence, with our bodies, and with the ways in which we navigate this world. So you basically go from this like super present kid to this like isolated, anxious teen that is hyper aware of their bodies, of the ways that they don't fit into this world. And I think also one of the most difficult parts of being a teenager is how unnecessarily kind of like difficult the experience is made for you. Like it's seriously unnecessarily traumatic, and because I feel like a lot of people's attempts to protect teenagers only further like harms them. I think we are left uninformed. My hurt adolescent speaking. I'm 27. They oh man. I feel like no one really tells you like, yo, this stuff is normal. So you're literally like in your room or locked in the bathroom having a full-blown meltdown about your body, how you feel. You're also hormonal, so how you feel, even if you weren't insecure, you're still like, your brain is on fire, and you are stuck to dealing with your peers' own like interpretations of what is going on with your body. And also all of a sudden you have grown people commenting on your body. From like, I remember like being like going from elementary school to middle school, and all of a sudden people are like, wow, like in regards, I guess, to my breast. And it's just like, you are related to me, don't do that, that's weird. And it's like, that's normalized. So you are all of a sudden constantly under scrutiny. Your body all of a sudden becomes a point of debate, and without choice you enter this like political war without even being aware of yourself and the language to even decipher what people are saying around you. For girls, especially visibly Black girls, our bodies have never been our own. From violence and sexual traumas within the home, as our intro to sex ed, to the media we've consumed, messages in the TV and music that further affirm our worth, that further affirm our worth is in our willingness to submit and to please, to Sundays at church where it's beat into your head that you have to be a good wife and like not give in to the devil, and if you lose your virginity, that's like tantamount to just go straight to hell, bro. Why even like try? To historically women being sent to psychiatric prisons for the diagnosis of hysteria, which is just essentially like, bro, stop crying so much. Like, just go get locked up, which is significantly more emotional than being emotional. Like, why would you literally just lock someone up for being emotional or having nervous breakdowns? But whatever. To the literal history of modern gynecology being literally built, like the foundation of modern day gynecology, like the study of the gynos, is literally built on the violation, the rape and mutilation of Black women. Where in all of this can we possibly like find a green light to explore what we want, what feels good, feel confident voicing no's and experimenting with different things confidently and consensually? Like, I don't know where we're supposed to find that. And I think a lot of us, even before we even have the language to understand what is going on with our own bodies, already consciously and subconsciously know these things. Children are incredibly smart. They notice patterns. They notice body language. They don't have language. All they do is notice patterns to try to make their way through the world. So if I notice when this person acts like this, they get this. When this happens, this like you become this hyper aware of what you need to do to survive in this society. So it only benefits everyone to have these conversations with children from early on, so their experience in this world is a lot less traumatic, in an attempt to protect. So I saw this clip of HBO's In Treatment season 4 episode 15, where this teen named Layla is talking about how sex isn't really what she thought it would be, and when she's in the act she thinks about things she shouldn't, like how upset her grandma would be if she knew. And in response to that, the therapist, Dr. Brooke Taylor, in the show says,
"Are other people disappointed in it too?"
Are you disappointed in it?
Because I've always wanted it to be more than what it is.
Tell me about that.
I mean, I've had sex. Like, 3 boys and 1 girl. When things start really happening, I kind of start thinking about the wrong stuff.
Wrong stuff? How? In what way?
I guess I would just start, like, thinking about my grandma and, like, how pissed off she'd be if she knew. Do you think that's, like, fucked up?
I think that girls and women have been conditioned to not be present in their bodies during sex.
What do you mean?
Society in general places importance on female-identified bodies looking good during a sexual encounter. How we feel during a sexual encounter is secondary. It creates a pervasive dissociative effect. That's how you go into your mind with your grandma and not stay in the moment in your body. Yeah. You ever heard people talk about female orgasm, right?
Yeah, like you shouldn't expect it to happen every time.
Exactly. It's fickle. Female sexuality is mysterious. Women are unknowable. Making us come is arduous. Locating the clitoris is impossible. You know, this all broadcasts out to every gender. Women's feelings are so difficult to determine, it's not even worth the effort.
When the therapist says it creates this pervasive dissociative effect, that really stuck with me because a lot of my experiences, both sexual and non-sexuals, when things intensify, when I feel joy, when I do anything that I have guilt surrounded by, I disconnect from the moment. I have a lot of guilt around random stuff, like really like random day-to-day things from like my boyfriend will literally point it out all the time. Like I remember one of the first times where I saw him like completely demolish a box of cookies. I was like, hungry. And not because of like sugar or health or anything. I was literally like, no, we're gonna run out. And he was like, I could just go to the store and buy more. Like, why are you freaking out? Like, my every interaction with anyone in my life is like the reenactment of things that were like taken from me constantly. And I've become super aware of it. I used to be like, wow, I'm so type A and nitpicky. No, I'm traumatized. But yeah, I catch myself doing everything like as if I'm gonna get caught or I'm in trouble. I feel like I tiptoe around. Even when I had my own apartment, I would tiptoe around very quietly. I would speak very quietly. I play music very quietly. Like, I don't really take up a lot of space, make a lot of room, make a lot of noise. And that's like a really sad way to live. I live with this like hyper vigilance, with this like expectation that someone's gonna bust in the door at any moment, like that someone's watching me, that something's gonna go wrong, that I'm gonna get in trouble. And you may start to realize this is why we have to tackle this, because I can't be 30 like being like, put the music down. That's like that's no way to live, bro. I feel like my entire life has been dictated by like not feeling like I have something for my own. I was having a conversation with a close friend the other day, actually, in preparation for this video, and something she was mentioning, with which I really related to, is like, even with like watching porn as an adult, like it's like no volume on. Like very like, don't even move, like blanket up to here, like you can't, it's like, why in my own house can I not enjoy myself? And it's because this is what you're used to. We've never really had a space to explore who we are safely and without judgment and without really, bad consequences. So yeah, I'm never really comfortable or present. I can perform like I am, and I did that well for many years and normalized it. As someone with pretty privilege, I've been pretty used to being looked at my whole life and being kind of like desired in that sense. And I think I substituted being desired with desiring myself. I kind of equated the two. And as time has passed, I have realized that's not the same. I always felt like as long as I provided something that I looked good or made good art or was funny or interesting or flattered who I was with, or whatever could help me to like win someone over, that would be proof that I was good enough, that I was like, that I was smart enough, that I was funny enough, that I was just enough. And I feel like that really, that was kind of enough for me, because I didn't realize what I was doing for the past few years. But as I've gotten older, and I also feel like the pandemic crunched together the timeline of like the self-work in my life, because it just really like packed in the punches as far as the things that I need to confront. Not loving myself was one of them. Loving yourself sounds like such a throwaway statement. We hear it all the time. And I think in my attempts at loving myself in the past, they were just kind of like band-aids. I was just kind of washing over the problem. I only masked the problem. And I keep having the same issues independent of the environment I'm in. These are things that I want to work through, or at least understand my motivations better and try to experience more pleasure in my life. I'm compelled to really communicate why I think we can all benefit from this. I think, more pleasure, no duh, do it. But for real, I think it's really needed, because it's something that I didn't prioritize in my life. And I think sometimes we don't really sit with what pleasure can be, independent of like escapism, independent of self-harm. In general, I am content with a calm, almost boring life. I by no means think that life should be good all the time. I by no means think that life should be like an episode of Euphoria, hyper-saturated and intensity of emotion. I think any highly intense emotion is not reliable and is not sustainable, so you kind of have to find a balance. But I want to work to find ways to feel good and enjoy life and love myself independent of where I am in life and what I can provide. Audre Lorde, in Uses of the Erotic, and I read it in Sister Outsider, says, another important way in which the erotic connection functions is in the opening and fearless underlining of my capacity for joy, in the way my body stretches to music and opens in response, hearkening to its deepest rhythms, so every level upon which I sense also opens to the erotically satisfying experience, whether it's dancing, building a bookcase, writing a poem, examining an idea. Boom. Like, she writes so poetically, so beautifully. Like, I feel like this perfectly encapsulates what this would bring to my life. Like, I have this desire to feel joy fully, to be present, to feel a deep and complex range of emotions without protectively shutting off. Even when all I want is to feel, I am terrified. And it's really hard to admit that I want more, because I have to contend with the fact that I knowingly and unknowingly put up with not enough. I normalized it. I convinced myself I deserved it. I put myself last. I shape-shifted and subdued my power for validation. I feel like I've really been mourning all that I could have had I, wanted more for myself. And I was never taught to want more. I was taught to not be a problem, to be easy to deal with, to think ahead for what others need and never for myself. So I randomly the other day got a podcast recommendation while I was like looking at my recommendations, and I browsed the channel and found this really interesting podcast episode from the Unfuck Your Brain podcast with the host Cara Lowenthal. And she made some great points that I hadn't really realized.
A lot of feminism is rooted in the understanding that people socialized as women are taught to view themselves as sexual objects, and to understand their sexuality as not being an internal lived experience, but we're taught to believe that our experience of desire should spring from being desired by someone else. And so in that sense, like, we're this object that is supposed to be like ignited by someone else's gaze, which is not how I think people socialized as male in our culture are socialized to think about sex. I think they are socialized to believe that their sexuality is internal, it springs from within. And to me, that's the source of so many of women's body image issues. Of course, you add in all of the like unrealistic depictions in the media, you just add in the like anthropological aspect, right? Which is that in any human society, people are like obsessed with food and rituals around food and bodies and body modification. It's just like a human thing. And then, whatever is hard to achieve is valued and associated with eliteness. So when there's not enough food, being fat is considered beautiful and unattainable. And now we live in a society where there is a ton of food. And so being unrealistically thin is considered to be attractive and unattainable. There's so many intersecting forces, but when you put all that together, and then sex is obviously like an outgrowth of that too, like how you feel in your body, how you think about your body, what you think when you look at your body. Like if you spend all day thinking about how your body should look different and you ate too many calories or whatever else, like of course you don't feel sexy at the end of the day. People socialized as women don't know how to connect to that within themselves, and like, what does it mean to feel sexy in a way that really has nothing to do with whether anybody else looking at you thinks you're sexy?
The quote I want to go back to in that is when she says, a lot of feminism is rooted in the understanding that people socialized as women are taught to view themselves as sexual objects and to understand their sexuality as not being an internal lived experience, but we're taught to believe that our experience of desire should spring from being desired by someone else. And so in that sense, we are this object that is supposed to be ignited by someone else's gaze. She says men's sexuality is inherent. It springs from within. And women's is like waiting to be ignited by someone outside of themselves. And honestly, hearing this the other day broken down like this, I feel like added some pieces to the puzzle that I didn't even know was missing in my attempt to find more joy and pleasure in my life. For 1 to 2 years now, I've been setting the intention of having no more bad sex, not performing intimacy for anybody. If I don't feel it, I don't do it. Learning to say no, essentially. And I wish that just from wanting this desire, that would be enough for the transformation that I'm looking for in my life, that just setting that intention would fix everything that needs to be fixed. My inner people pleaser makes it so that it's really easy for me to figure out what other people need and find what you need and fix that problem for you, make you happy, change myself for you without anybody even asking. This is just me. I'm preemptively thinking about what's needed so I don't get hurt. because finding problems in other people was super clear for me, and like doing the things that need to get done to fix that. But through that, I never know how to sit with my own desires because I don't allow myself to have desires. And I make myself content initially with like for example, like just like having just give me the little corner of the bed. Like, you know, we have this really, really big bed. Don't worry, I'll just sleep on the corner. It's okay. I always sleep on the corner. Like, I make it such a big deal. Like, no, I only need this much. Like, you take more. I only need this little tiny bit. Like, because I know, like, you know, you would want more. Like, I just want this little bit. I really make it be known. I'm good. I'm really, 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 really good. Like, and, you know, I take my little corner, I take my little tiny piece of the sheet, and I take my little corner of the pillow. And then time passes, and I feel upset that I have so little. And I resent people. I resent myself. I think I also find myself being like subconsciously, not even communicating, like I'm passive aggressive, Jesus. Being like, well, they should have anticipated that I would want more because I'm anticipating that they would want more. Why couldn't they do that for me when I'm doing that for them? And it's like, I'm not even like acknowledging that I have a desire. I'm creating a self-fulfilling prophecy that no one cares for me, like, and no one cares enough, and I care so much that I go out of my way without even being asked. Like, I never ask, I never demand. So in realizing that that's the way that I am, and realizing that that is the destruction of so many of the relationships that I value in my life, not being transparent from the beginning, I've been basically just saying no to everything. Like, it's like, I'm not even going to engage with dynamics that I clearly am struggling to navigate, because it's not helpful for me right now. And that's been helpful as far as like the goal that I've had of like not engaging in things that I don't want to engage in. But I feel like it's created its own problem because I want to say yes at times, but I've become super fearful. I'm so, you know, like affected by my environment, by the moment, by stress, by the TV show I watched before going to bed, by everything. And I feel like it's turned intimacy, this intention that I set, is turned intimacy into this bigger issue, an issue that in trying to fix it became like a super tense thing in my life. By trying to fix it, I think I essentially broke it. I started to get really lost in all of the times where I feel like I should have said no and I feel like also in really sitting with this, kind of like when you really start to set an intention, it makes you realize all the ways in which you haven't done that before. So I started to get really lost in all the times where I felt like I should have said no. And I started to be filled with regret and shame. And I kind of went down this rabbit hole of like realizing things about the ways that I've engaged with people. And going down that hole made the situation in the present moment even messier, because all of a sudden I was finding messes where I didn't even think there were messes, and I was kind of like reframing my entire life in such a negative light where I felt like so much was taken from me, which is like not really fully the picture, but I was so stuck on like just like, nah, like I need to protect myself. I need to learn how to say no, because I'm like, I just became really scared because I just became aware that I haven't been taking care of myself. So I was like, all right, I'm never going to let this happen again. And I need to figure out every single situation where I let this happen and find the pattern so that it never happens again. But I think I created a huge mess and I haven't really know how to make it better. I realized that I also I need to relax in general. I need to find a better work-life balance. I need to, like, it's like all this, I need to, like, in reality, life will never be perfect. How are some people so present, so sensual, so in tune? So like, I felt like I used to be, but what happened and why do I feel so broken? So all of this came together for me with the clip of the podcast and the realization that I don't love myself, like I'm not showing up for myself, in this really, really, really self-revelatory way. I didn't see my own sexuality as innate, as part of me, as something that's as part of me as any other human desire, as like hunger, as sleep, as the need to breathe. It's mine for me. It does not need to be ignited by a situation or by a specific person. It's always there, whether I know how to engage with it or not. I think in trying to reclaim it, I focused on no, which of course is important, but through that, I further repressed it, which is what I'm used to from growing up. I was still in a sense waiting for it to be ignited, like waiting. I thought, I was waiting to find it, but I in a sense was stagnant waiting for it to be ignited. I wasn't doing it for myself. And this brought to mind another podcast that I found right after the first one I shared, which is from Girl Boner Radio, where August McLaughlin and Dr. Jordan Wiggins were talking, and the doctor says,
I find that pleasure is like a dial. And if it's turned down, your libido's low, we have turned it down in several areas of our lives. And we've overcompensated by working hard at work or immersing ourselves in our children's lives. But the best place to start is getting back in touch with those desires and asking yourself, what will bring me pleasure in and out of the bedroom? And this is single or partnered. But what can I do in this moment to make it a little more joyful, a little more delicious? Like, how can I structure my day for more pleasure and joy? Is that stopping and getting a latte? Is it taking a break to exercise and move your body? Because it can look different for everyone, but we need to start turning that pleasure dial back up. And oftentimes it's not necessarily in the bedroom first.
I was essentially not respecting my own need for pleasure. When I say I didn't love myself and like don't love myself still is something I'm definitely working towards. I would never deprive someone that I love of joy. I would only want them to pursue the things that make them feel incredible, that make them feel full and free. I've talked about this a few times on this channel already, but I've always kind of like knowingly and unknowingly punished myself, maybe as a consequence for being bad, for not being mentally well, for not being financially well, for not being a good partner or friend. I deprive myself of joy and pleasure until I'm better, until I'm good. I've noticed recently, now that my appetite has been better since I've been sober from weed, for some months now, like now I can eat more consistently. Now that like that factor is out of the picture, I've been able to identify a pattern that I've never really like identified before, which is when I feel guilty or bad, I can't eat. I think for people that struggle with eating disorders, this isn't like a foreign feeling. This is like a known thing. But prior to like 2020, I never really struggled with appetite. I never struggled with food. So realizing how emotional it's become because of the last 2 years made me realize if these emotional complexities are in that part of my life, clearly it's in other parts too. With eating, it's like something I need to engage in. So it's something I need to like talk about. I need to like work through. I need to figure out if I'm not feeling like it. If I can't eat, it's like, what's wrong with me? I have to do something about it. In the same podcast, I believe, the guest says something along the lines of, and please know, obviously, if you're asexual, this doesn't apply, and this is a simplification, and health or lack of it doesn't mean anything about your worth as a human being, your value, your importance. But the quote was helpful because she says something along the lines of, healthy people have libidos. And that super clicked for me also because like it just made me realize if all of a sudden like I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, I'd be like, wait, something is clearly going on health-wise, emotional-wise. Like, do I need to go get checked out? What's going on? But for me, in my Catholic DNA, like I'm not even religious, but as a Dominican immigrant, it is part of my colonized brain chemistry to like suffer, to be like, I need to feel pain to feel good. I need to like things need to feel so horribly difficult. Like that, I can't have something good for myself, clearly. So I never even question like, bro, I'm not even feeling like, I don't even want to listen to music. Like, I don't even want to be turned on by life. Like, I don't even want to do anything. Like, I don't even want to like dance. Like, and I'd be like, yeah, like that, like that's just kind of momentary, but like I'm getting this work done though. Like it's like, that's the problem. If everything was at its best, I would be motivated, hungry, pushing for more, fighting for more. And that's something that I've really been having to like acknowledge. So this is essentially now a work in progress in my life. I wish I had like the perfect kind of like step by step like routine as to how you can find and add more pleasure into your life. I hope that just by talking about kind of my desires and my experiences with it, that maybe that can help you work towards finding more joy and pleasure in your life. I think ultimately the things that I'm working on right now are continuing to take care of my body, making sure I get sleep, making sure I eat. I think eating for me is the thing that if I don't do it, my life goes downhill immediately. It sounds like no duh. Like, but even emotionally, I feel like there's people that can eat like one meal a day. If I do that, everything goes downhill. So making sure I have that. Something else I've been doing is like, even though in the moment it doesn't feel the best, I know it's for the best. So for me, I have had like an aversion to music for a few months now because it makes me super emotional. I think it's a very bittersweet thing. It's so beautiful. It's so powerful. It's so moving that it's like to be that moved reminds me of how I'm not generally moved. So I kind of sit through it and I allow myself to like cry if I need to. Like I create kind of like private moments for it, whether I have my headphones on and I'm on the couch or like whether I'm in the studio painting and I'm all alone. I allow myself to just kind of process those emotions in a safe and way that feels okay for me. So I try to do those things and then you kind of like process it and then you kind of start to have a little bit of fun with it. So making the active effort to doing that for yourself. I've also tried to, with like things like sex, for example, to not see it as this thing that takes from me, this thing that will leave me drained, this thing that will hurt me. I created a lot of really negative relationships to it throughout my entire life. But then I thought I got over it, and now I'm kind of like really redefining it, what it means for me and not for others. But I've started to see it as something that I deserve, something that I'm worthy of, something that I want, something that will make me feel good, acknowledging for what it is, which is something that is positive and healthy, and that healthy people that aren't asexual crave and desire. And when I think about it that way, rather than like, I'm so tired, how can I even like want to, like, I just want to go to bed. It's like, I'm so tired. What would be a great way to end this day is with like, some connection with myself and someone else. So I've really been trying to see it as like a safe space for rest and healing, which has been its own journey, and it's paying off in its own way. And I'm really happy I'm kind of developing that for myself and setting that intention for myself, because I want my life to feel full and to have more emotional and intimate connections with people I care about. I think also something that I used to do a lot that I need to start reincorporating again is moving my body more, not necessarily in terms of exercise, but in terms of feeling like the energy flow within me, hearing music and allowing myself to sway, finding like that energy, that anxious energy that sometimes bubbles up inside of us that makes us feel a little frantic, finding ways to like help that exit my body through movement and just like releasing that tension, because sometimes I just sit there and I get so scared about being scared that I just stay stuck and paralyzed. So finding ways in which I can help my body process that emotion rather than trying to rationalize that emotion and sitting still and continuing to bubble over in panic. I also allow myself to like sing more, to sing more, to make more noise. That's also been really helpful. Something also that I used to do a lot as well was taking pictures of myself. I used to do it because I needed reference photos when I was in art school. But through that, I learned so much about my own body, what I looked like, and how it moves. And I just gained a sense of just very neutral love for it, like independent of anything, it was mine. I feel like something I've struggled with my entire life is feeling like I'm not in my own body. So being in my own body through movement and through looking at it gave me a sense of grounding that I feel like I've been super detached from, because I don't really even look in the mirror as much anymore. So that's a practice that could really help with finding, joy in your own body again. Writing is always super important. I think even writing this video in regards to processing how I feel about pleasure was very cathartic. And I think helped release a weight off of my shoulders, even though having to record it put a different weight on my shoulders, but it's okay. That's part of life. You're gonna have to feel the weight sometimes, and it's not the end of the world. But yeah, I hope to continue this conversation because I am ready to have fun, bro. Like, I just want to have fun. Like, there's never going to be a moment where things aren't going on in life. So just make the time now. Like, whether it's really enjoying, like, making yourself a meal and taking in, like, the sensual experience of, like, cooking. It sounds so cheesy, right? But, like, literally sensuality, I feel like it's also one of the ways to be present and joyful. And it's not necessarily equal to sexuality. Like, sensuality is not, like, sexy necessarily. It's literally being one with your senses. So what are your senses? What is it? Touch, taste, hear, smell, see? So turning everything in your life into a really sensual experience. And that's one of the ways in which you could be like mindful and present. It's like a form of like meditation. But really, like, if you cutting up a tomato, like, really sit with that tomato, like, feel the wetness of it, like, hear the chopping of the knife, smell the smell of the tomato, feel the breeze from the open window wafting against your legs, like, things like that. Really turn it into an experience where you're sitting with every feeling and and also even taking in the fact that through that meal you're nurturing yourself. Really putting your phone down. This one's hard for me, but when I make a really good meal, especially after I just did all that like sensual like cooking, like really experiencing the meal that I'm making, a lot of the time I don't even want to like be on my phone while I'm eating. And I love to be on my phone when I'm eating. Oh my God, I love to watch stuff. But sometimes the meal is so good, like when you really like take your time and you're super present in that experience, that you're like, bro, I gotta put this phone down and continue this sensual experience and feel like all these flavors are melting on my tongue. Like, literally, I hate myself. But just literally continue to feel that. And I feel like that then starts to translate to other aspects of your life, where you start to notice, like, when you're walking in the street, like, wow, like the way like the light is like shining through the leaves of that tree is like really pretty. And like you just start to notice everywhere how, like, despite how much pain there is, how much it often feels like we're losing, we're missing out, like how much we're actually getting in your day-to-day. So that perspective shift will bring so much more joy in your life. Currently, something I'm doing is, I keep saying I'm in my yes era. I'm saying yes to things again. I've been saying no to so much stuff, and it's important. It helped me gain a sense of control. But now that I'm in control, I'm like, the box that I've put myself in isn't enough for the fullness of me. So I'm in my yes era now. Now I feel comfortable and safe enough to explore again. So when I get invited to events, when I get invited to hang out, I'm like saying yes. Obviously, like, if it's something that doesn't make sense for me to do, then I don't do it. But if it's something that I would be great to go to, and I would normally be like, nah, I don't know if I want to go all the way over there. I don't know if I want to get dressed. Like, I'm going to be so tired. It's like, no, let me just say yes and do it. Because, like, I think we often feel that, like, especially when it comes to, like, love and happiness and joy, that you have a limited amount of time. Like, if I do this, I'm going to be so tired. When I get home, I'm not going to have enough for anybody, not even myself. And it's like, if you treat it like you're always lacking, you're never going to have enough. But if you share it, if you help others, if you talk with others, if you get yourself out there, if you do things that will enrich your life, life will just keep giving you more and more. So yeah, with all those things said, Thank you so much for watching. Thanks again, CHEEX, for sponsoring this video. I hope you all find time to pleasure yourselves, to find joy in the little moments, and to sensually cut a tomato later. I hope you all have a good day, and bye.